The security cameras at Gate 47 probably caught her face when she found it. That tiny pause, right as her fingers grazed the velvet box wedged between her laptop and highlighters. The hesitation before flipping the note open. 3 lines, handwritten. No name. No signature. But she knew it was from me. Of course she did. She was in the VIP lounge, sipping her usual herbal tea, prepping for the biggest meeting of her quarter, the one she'd been rehearsing out loud for weeks, barely noticing I was in the room. And while she adjusted her blazer and practiced the firm yet warm smile she always used on investors, she had no idea her perfect image was about to shatter in the quietest way I could manage. The ring I gave her 9 years ago hadn't been on her finger in at least 6 months. Too tight, she said once. Don't want to lose it traveling, she offered another time. I didn't ask again. I just stopped noticing, at least out loud. That's how you survive in a marriage like ours. You learn what not to notice. Like the late-night text she'd angle her screen away to answer. Or the business trips that suddenly had no return tickets until the day before. Or how she started showering before coming home instead of after. But that morning, I noticed everything. At 5:03 a.m., she left for the airport. At 5:12, I was already loading the moving truck. I'd booked everything with quiet efficiency. Storage unit, pet relocation for her dog. She said she'd take him and never did. And a locksmith who owed me a favor. Every single piece of my life that hadn't been contaminated by her lies was packed into labeled boxes. Not dramatic, just clinical, like an evacuation. By 8:27, she was opening that bag. And I was already gone. No calls. No fight. No scene. She wasn't even supposed to know I'd left until she got back from her meeting. But I guess I got tired of playing by her schedule, of waiting to be noticed. I figured, if she was going to rehearse her performance for everyone else, I'd deliver mine exactly once, wordless, unforgettable, and impossible to clap back at. And if you think the note said something like, goodbye, or, I hope you're happy, you don't know me. I spent 2 hours rewriting it until it was cold enough to sting, but quiet enough to sound like closure. It's not that I didn't see. It's that I kept loving you anyway. That ends now. That's it. That was my entire exit. No ultimatums. No drama. Just truth, folded neatly next to the ring she never missed until someone finally took it back. The fallout? Oh, you'll want to hear about that. She called me exactly 23 minutes after she opened the bag. The first call came in silent mode. I watched the screen blink once, twice, then vanish. I was sitting in the back of a rented U-Haul with half my life in cardboard boxes and the other half still spinning in my chest. The phone buzzed again, 5 missed calls, then 6. Then the text. Where are you? It was so simple. So hollow. Like she was trying to play it safe, not sure whether to panic or fake calm. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to torture her, but because I knew any response would weaken the one thing I'd finally gotten right. Walking away before she could tell me another version of the truth. I imagined her in that lounge, white blazer pressed, hair tucked neatly behind one ear, $1,000 pin in one hand and my ring in the other, fingers trembling. I wondered if she hid her face. If she excused herself. If her perfectly rehearsed life suddenly felt unscripted. But I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't smiling. In fact, I felt sick. My stomach twisted with guilt, not because I did something wrong, but because after everything, I still didn't want to hurt her. That was the worst part. I wanted her to feel what I felt, yes. But I didn't want to become what she was, someone who could pretend love while secretly draining it out. She called again, this time from a different number. That told me 2 things. She knew I was ignoring her, and she was now desperate enough to use her assistant's phone. I picked up, but I didn't speak. I just let her voice fill the silence. Erwin, What is this? Are you okay? Please tell me this isn't what it looks like. I don't understand the note. I don't even know what to say. I'm here. I'm in this meeting lounge and everyone's waiting, but I can't breathe. Are you home? Where are you? Can you just talk to me? Her voice cracked on the word breathe, and for a second, I heard her. Really heard her, not the version I'd been surviving beside, but the woman I once fell for. I sat there listening to the spaces between her words, the part where truth almost lives. But I didn't speak, because anything I said would have undone the silence I finally earned. That afternoon, while she stumbled through that very important presentation, I was already in a small town 3 states away. A 1-bedroom rental with yellow curtains and a microwave older than our marriage. I ate cold pasta straight out of the container. No wine, no music, just me and the sound of nothing. The kind of silence that isn't lonely, it's honest. By the evening, she'd left 12 voicemails. Some begging, some furious, one completely silent with just breathing and a muffled sob at the end. I didn't delete any of them. I wanted to remember how quickly the mask cracked once the audience left the room. But I wasn't doing this for revenge. The truth is, I had no plan after the note. I didn't think ahead to what life would be like after her. I didn't even know how to tell my parents. I just knew I couldn't keep watching her pretend, and worse, I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. And still, even now, part of me wants to hear her side. Part of me still wonders if she'll twist the story into something halfway believable, something that makes me feel small enough to doubt myself again. I wish that part of me would die already, but it won't. Because love, even betrayed, leaves traces. And her voice, tangled in panic and confusion, is still echoing somewhere in my chest. I haven't even told you how I found out. I was never supposed to see it. That's what makes it so ironic. The moment that shattered my delusion didn't come from a confrontation, or some anonymous tip, or even a hotel receipt dropped carelessly on the floor. No, it came from a digital calendar notification that pinged on the shared iPad we kept in the kitchen. An iPad we used to coordinate grocery lists and cat vet appointments. It happened 2 weeks before I placed the ring in her bag. I was chopping carrots. Yes, I cook when I'm anxious, which is often, and the iPad buzzed on the counter. A calendar reminder appeared, titled, Dinner with Garrett, 8 p.m., Orly's, back in trance. I stood there with the knife in my hand, frozen, rereading the words like I didn't know what they meant. But I did. I just didn't want to believe it. Garrett. Garrett was her mentor. I'd met him once, at a firm retreat. He was charming in the way oil slicks shimmer. Too smooth, too perfect, too quick with the compliments. I remember watching them laugh at the same joke like they practiced it. I told myself I was overthinking. I always do. I always did. But that calendar entry, that wasn't a meeting. It was secretive. Hidden. Back entrance. That wasn't an error. That was a map to deception. I should have confronted her. That's what normal people do, right? But I'm not normal. I talk myself out of confrontation until the confrontation becomes an emergency evacuation. So instead, I decided to wait. To see what happened. I clicked accept on the calendar invite, so it wouldn't alert her. Then I sat in my bedroom that night in silence while she dressed in the next room, humming something cheerful, saying she had back-to-back prep with a West Coast account. She didn't know I tracked the Uber drop-off. She didn't know I watched her walk into the dim alleyway entrance of Orly's, a restaurant known more for its dim lighting and discreet booths than its overpriced tapas. I waited. I watched. I felt like someone had cracked open my ribs and left the wind to do the rest. But still, I didn't confront her. I walked home like my shoes were filled with cement. I laid beside her that night while she whispered a drowsy, meeting was exhausting, and I replied, "You're working so hard," like I hadn't watched her lean into Garrett's shoulder over candlelight. That next morning, I made her pancakes. I know how pathetic that sounds. I know. But I didn't want to catch her in the act. I wanted to see if she'd confess. If some trace of guilt would finally bubble up through her polished surface. It didn't. She kissed my cheek, complimented the syrup, and left for yoga. After she left, I opened her laptop bag. I wasn't looking for more evidence. I was looking for a place to start my exit. That's when I found it. A birthday card addressed to Garrett and signed, but unmistakably hers. Inside was one line. You make every excuse feel worth it. That's when the nausea hit me. Not just betrayal, but the understanding that I had been replaced, and worse, rationalized out of existence. I wasn't just cheated on. I was turned into an inconvenience she was managing between secrets. I sat there staring at the card, thinking, how many times did she smile at me while holding this pen? I didn't take a photo. I didn't scan it. I just closed the card, put it back, and slowly zipped the bag shut. That's the moment I knew I wouldn't ask for an explanation. I would write my own. Not with rage. Not with theatrics. But with silence and a ring placed exactly where she'd feel it most. And now she's unraveling. The woman who had every move planned is suddenly improvising. And Garrett? Let's just say he's about to become part of this too, whether he's ready or not. 3 days after the dinner with Garrett, I found something that peeled back the final layer of whatever this marriage used to be. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. I was just noticing, picking up pieces like I always do. Because when you live with someone who lies with a smile, you start to notice the corners of things, the loose threads. That's how I found it, the audio file. It was on her old Bluetooth speaker. The one we used to play jazz through on rainy nights. back when we still pretended to like the same songs. She was packing for another presentation trip and asked me to fix the speaker because it wasn't pairing. While reconnecting it, I tapped the wrong input and accidentally launched the stored voice recordings. There were several. I didn't even know it had storage. The latest one was only 41 seconds long, titled Drive Talk. I pressed play without thinking. And what I heard, I can still feel my spine freezing over. It was her voice. And Garrett's. Laughing, not even quietly. She said, "If this pitch works, I'll finally have the leverage. After that, I'm done tiptoeing around him." He replied, "So, the ring comes off for good?" Then silence. Then her saying, "I haven't worn it in 6 months. He hasn't noticed. He won't fight back. He never does." The recording ended there. No context. No, I'm joking. No hesitation. Just plain, surgical contempt. The way she said it, like I was a file to be archived. A boring, predictable man she could quietly erase from her life the moment it was convenient. And worse, she knew I wouldn't stop her. Because I don't raise my voice. Because I don't push back. Because I spent years thinking that loyalty meant absorbing everything until the storm passed. But the storm wasn't passing. It was settling in. I stared at the speaker, hands shaking, pulse thudding in my ears. That recording was never meant to be heard. That wasn't betrayal. That was strategy. She wasn't cheating because she was lost. She was cheating because I was easy to leave. She'd already moved on. I was just the last administrative detail to clean up. That night, she ordered Thai food and asked if I wanted to watch something. I said sure. I sat there beside her on the couch, thinking about that recording while she giggled at a sitcom she wasn't even watching. I imagined her texting Garrett under the throw blanket while my hand sat limply on her knee. She was already somewhere else. I was just scenery. That's when I wrote the note. The words weren't hard. They came out like they'd been waiting, stacked behind my teeth for years. I folded it 3 times. I went to our bedroom, pulled the ring box from the back of my drawer, and snapped it shut. It made a sound I still hear in my dreams. Final. Quiet. Like the sound of a page turning on a book I never got to finish. I knew exactly when to place it. She had a quarterly pitch in Los Angeles. High stakes, full of executives and client-side pressure. She'd leave at dawn, pack her bag with perfect confidence, and step into the airport like she always did, clean, polished, untouchable. She wouldn't notice the small shift in weight when I slipped the ring box into her side pouch. Wouldn't even glance at the zipper that now carried the last truth I had left to give. And when she opened it, at 9:02 a.m., surrounded by polished wood and soft jazz in that elite lounge, she found it. The ring, the note, and the silence I owed myself. What she did next was the real surprise. It wasn't rage. It wasn't panic. It was something else. Something far more dangerous. I thought the note and the ring would end it. Not just the marriage. No, that ended long before. But the performance, the gaslighting, the silent undoing of who I was. I thought she'd read my words, feel the cold metal of the ring, and realize the game was over. I expected shock. Maybe shame. Possibly silence. What I didn't expect was what happened next. 2 hours after she opened the bag, I got the first email. Subject line, very mature. That's all it said in the body, too. Just, very mature. No greeting. No name. No signature. She didn't even address me, just reacted. As if I'd ruined her day. As if I'd made things inconvenient. As if I was the problem. I didn't reply. 3 hours later, another email. This one longer. Angry. Dissecting my timing. Accusing me of sabotage. She wrote, "You knew this was the most important day of my quarter. You could have waited. You always wait. Why now? Why now? Because I had finally remembered who I was before she turned me into a footnote. That's why now." That evening, while she was supposed to be across the country managing investor decks and negotiating new contracts, my phone rang again. I didn't answer, but I watched the calls pile up. 27 total. All from her. Different numbers. Her assistants, a hotel landline, or rideshare drivers. I knew she was unraveling. She was trying to reclaim control, not over her career, but over the story. And when she realized I wouldn't answer, she did what I feared most. She came back early. I was asleep on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by unopened boxes and the smell of old carpet glue. I'd fallen asleep with my hoodie over my face, trying to shut out the world. Around 1:14 a.m., there was banging at the door. Not knocking. Banging. Fist to wood. I froze. She had never been the type to cause scenes. Not her. Not miscomposed. But that night she snapped. "Erwin, open the damn door," she hissed through the hallway. "I'm not playing games. I'm not going to be humiliated by you of all people." I didn't move. I stayed behind the door, my breath shallow, my heart doing that panicked rhythm it always did when I used to apologize for things I didn't do. She kept going. "You think this makes you look strong? You think slipping a ring in my bag makes you brave? You're still the same, you hide. That's all you ever do." She wasn't wrong. I do hide. But that night, I wasn't hiding. I was choosing not to perform for her anymore. Choosing not to be her quiet doormat, the man who swallowed betrayal like it was part of the vows. I let her yell. Let her spit venom through the wood. She stayed for 20 minutes. And then, she went silent. I thought she'd left. But in the morning, I found a card shoved under the door. Her handwriting. Too sharp, like it was carved rather than written. It said, "You made your move. Don't be surprised if I make mine." That was the moment I realized this wasn't over. Not to her. She didn't feel exposed, she felt challenged. As if I had embarrassed her, as if I had crossed some line of mutual pretense. It wasn't heartbreak in her eyes when I saw her through the peephole, it was strategy. And the part that chilled me? She didn't deny anything. Not the affair. Not the recording. Not even the card to Garrett. She didn't offer one excuse. Because in her mind, she didn't owe me anything. I was already written out of her version of events. But now, I had rewritten the ending. The only question was, well, what'd she do next? And the answer came faster than I expected. The next morning, I took the long way to the corner store just to feel the cold air bite at my face. My stomach was twisted, my shoulders aching from another night on the apartment floor, but it was quiet outside. Peaceful. I remember thinking, maybe that's the end of it. Maybe she just needed to scream, throw her tantrum, and finally let it go. Maybe she'd accept the quiet truth of it all. The ring. The note. The silence I had every right to. I was wrong. When I got back, there was a manila envelope duct taped to the door. Not slid under it, taped. Centered. Deliberate. I peeled it off, already knowing her handwriting would be inside. But what I didn't expect was the contents. Inside was a printed photo. Not digital. Printed. High resolution. Full color. It showed me sitting alone on a bench, hoodie on, drinking coffee from a paper cup, staring into the distance like a lost tourist. It had been taken the day before. At the park near my new place. There was a yellow sticky note attached to it. No message. Just a smiley face. That was it. I dropped it on the table and stared at it like it might blink. My skin went cold, then hot, then cold again. She had followed me. Hired someone, maybe. Watch me. She knew where I lived. Knew my new routines. And instead of apologizing or disappearing like I'd hoped, she'd gone full psychological warfare. And it didn't stop there. By noon, 3 of my oldest friends had texted asking if I was okay. One said they heard Marlene was worried about me. Another mentioned that she said I'd walked off the grid after a nervous episode. I checked social media, nothing from her directly, but there were just enough breadcrumbs. A vague post, prayers for those struggling in silence. Mental health is real. Please reach out. A few photos of her with colleagues, smiling through the glow of sympathy. She wasn't hiding. She was rebranding, turning me into the fragile one. The unstable husband who couldn't handle her success. And I knew how people would see it. She was articulate, clean, beautiful. I was the guy who left a ring in her bag and vanished. The guy who didn't speak. The one who broke down. That night, I stared at the ceiling in the dark and thought, she's not trying to win me back. She's trying to erase me on her terms. And the sickest part? It was working. People were reaching out to her, not me. Her narrative was simpler, easier to digest. No one wants to hear about subtle betrayals, recordings, or the ache of slow emotional abandonment. They want villains. And somehow, she had made me into one, just for walking away. I thought about confronting her, sending the audio file to our mutual friends, posting the birthday card, exposing everything. But I didn't, because I knew how that story would go. Angry X lashes out. She would twist it, and I just looked bitter. I couldn't win her game because I wasn't playing it. I was trying to survive it. So instead, I stayed quiet. Until Garrett called me. Yes, Garrett. He found my number. I don't know how. Maybe from the card. Maybe from her. Maybe from guilt. But he left a voicemail. "Erwin," he said, voice stiff and clipped, "we need to talk. I don't think things are what she said they were." That one sentence flipped everything. Was he trying to clear his conscience? Was she lying to him too? Was I just a side character in some warped love triangle I didn't even understand? I called him back, and the truth that came next in that conversation, it changed everything I thought I knew. I didn't pick up on the first ring, or the second. I stared at the screen with Garrett's name lit up like a warning flare. I didn't know what I expected to hear. A threat? A denial? Maybe just his voice, smug and polished, asking why I was so dramatic. But what I heard when I finally picked up wasn't arrogance. It was hesitation. Or when he said, "Look, I don't know what she told you, but I didn't know she was still with you." Not really. Still with me? Not really? What kind of phrase was that? He kept going, his voice shaky, words tumbling fast, like he was trying to outrun guilt. She made it sound like you two were living separate lives, like you'd been emotionally distant for years, that you were more like roommates. I didn't think it was serious. I laughed, actually laughed, bitter and sharp, the kind of sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. "Oh, so you just happened to fall into bed with a woman you thought was maybe single-ish?" I asked, my voice flat. He paused, then said quietly, "She never said you were divorced. But she implied a lot of things. She called you passive, said you were fine with her doing her own thing. I figured if there was anything left between you, she wouldn't be spending nights at my place." Nights. That word dropped like a rock in my chest. Not a night. Nights. I leaned against the kitchen counter, eyes on the wall, mind racing. "She stayed with you?" I asked. Garrett exhaled hard. "A few times. During her client trips. Look, man, I'm not proud of it. But I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was like this. Like this." I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone, to throw something. Anything. To finally make noise after all the silence. But all I said was, "So what changed? Why are you calling me now?" And that's when he said the part that rattled me more than anything else. "She told me she'd left you. That she moved out." I believed her. But last week, I found a copy of your letter. The one from the bag. The note with the ring. She'd kept it. She left it sitting out on her desk. Like a trophy. I closed my eyes, breathing slow and shallow. Of course she had. "She's not who I thought she was," Garrett continued. "She's playing both of us, I think. She's using me. And I think she used you too." Used. Past tense. But I wasn't done. Not yet. "Did you ever tell her you loved her?" I asked, hating the words as I said them. "No," he answered too quickly. "She told me not to." I didn't respond. My mouth was dry. My thoughts scattered. "I thought you deserved to know," Garrett said. "Whatever this was, it wasn't real. Not for her. It was about leverage. Control. I'm sorry, man. For what it's worth. It wasn't worth much. Not to me. But it was something." After I hung up, I sat on the floor for hours, the phone beside me like a relic. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, thinking about how long I'd bent myself into silence, into patience, into acceptance, while she wove lies like silk. She didn't just cheat. She built a story where I didn't exist. And now Garrett, her backup plan, was starting to unravel, too. But here's the twist. She didn't know he'd called me. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Because I had one last thing to say to her. And I wanted to make sure she heard it exactly the way I needed to say it. In person. It had been 11 days since I left the note in her bag. 11 long, strange days where everything felt both raw and quiet, like my soul was recovering from something it had never been allowed to name. I didn't feel stronger. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt real. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing myself for the next lie, or waiting to be noticed. I existed on my own terms. But there was one thing left. Not revenge. Not closure. Something simpler. I needed her to look me in the eye and hear the truth. Not the version she'd crafted for her friends or Garrett or the people she manipulated with polished words, but the truth I had carried silently through years of slow heartbreak. So I asked her to meet. A public cafe. Neutral ground. Midday. I chose the place we used to go to before things got complicated, before client dinners, before late strategy sessions, before her phone buzzed at night and she turned it face down. I didn't know if she'd show, but she did. She walked in wearing white like she always did when she wanted to look untouchable. Calm. In control. But I saw the cracks. The stiffness in her hands. The tiredness she couldn't quite conceal. She looked like someone who'd been playing too many roles for too long. She sat down across from me and didn't speak. Just waited. I nodded. Took a sip of my coffee. Then I said, "I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just here to let you go." For good. Her eyebrows twitched, like she wasn't sure what game I was playing. You said I never speak, I went on. That I hide. Maybe you're right. I let too much slide. I excused too much. But that wasn't weakness, it was hope. I kept hoping we were still in the same story, even when you started writing a different one without me. She opened her mouth, but I lifted a hand gently. You don't owe me explanations. I'm not here for that. I just wanted to tell you this face to face. I loved you the best way I knew how. And I forgive you. Her expression cracked then. Just slightly. Enough that I saw the truth. Beneath all her performances, there was still a woman who hadn't expected kindness. Not from me. Not anymore. I forgive you, I repeated, softer. But I'm not carrying you with me. I'm done writing myself as the sad man in your narrative. I'm the man who walked away. And that's how I'll remember myself. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person across from her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe for once, I wasn't the quiet background to her story, but the final sentence. I stood up, left enough cash for the coffee, and walked out. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. There was no dramatic music. No applause. Just fresh air and the sound of my own footsteps, finally mine again. I moved out of that tiny apartment the following week. Found a small house near a library. Got a dog, because silence feels different when there's a heartbeat next to you that isn't asking for anything but time. As for Garrett, I never heard from him again. I hope he found his own way out. Or maybe he didn't. Either way, that's not my story anymore. Marlene texted once more, months later. Just a single message. I understand now. I hope you're doing okay. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need to. I was okay. In fact, I was more than okay. I was free.